welcome back to the Woodsman Perspective Podcast. And we're glad you came. We know you got a lot of choices, a lot of things you can listen to. We appreciate you picking us.
Tuning in
again. Yep. And today we're going to talk hardwoods, man. Hardwoods. So if you think back over the years, hardwoods was just the gold standard. That reference, like everybody, hardwoods.
That's where you want to be at. Hunting hardwoods.
Big
hunting
hardwoods. If you mentioned a piece of land, it's got hardwoods.
They still do it today. Every time they calls.
But the tide's turning in the trend. I won't say the tide, but the trend. The popular thing now.
It's two words.
Is early succession and diversity.
Yeah.
And so as those trends go, hardwoods still have their place. A lot of wildlife, you got to have hardwoods, and even just from a value standpoint, it's not.
They're just more fun to look at.
Look, we got a hardwood guy with us that's trying to bring them back.
Yeah, and look, so if you're listening and not watching, if you're watching, you already know who we got. If you're listening, we've got Dudley Phelps in the house with us today. He's the tree, I guess,
guru of Native
tree
Nurseries.
nerd, something that y'all put out.
I've been referred to as a tree nerd, and I'm kind of nerdy, and I like trees.
That's all right. That's all right. We're nerdy about this stuff too, in a way. I mean,
Dudley, for years, it's, I guess, the people that are more responsible for the depletion of hardwood is people in my business. I mean, you've
been candid about that.
For the last 30 years.
Yeah, you can't disagree with that.
We clear cut. We plant pines. We
clear land for farming.
I clear land for farming, and I don't know of another hardwood mill that's been built around here in the last 40 years.
Well, you hit on when we had Tim O'Brien on a while back. Y'all talked about when the soybeans went through the roof back in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah,
that they just came in and just destroyed.
They did. I was telling
That's what they're doing in Brazil right now.
Yeah, I was telling the story to Dudley.
The hardwoods.
Some of our older people, but First American Farms come into this part of the country, regional. I was telling him that Clay County, Noxubee, Lowndes, part up in Lamar County, Alabama. So they came in with KG blades, shears. So they would shear it, roam disc it, shear it, burn it, roam disc it, and put soybeans. And they were northern. It was a northern company.
They weren't even selling the timber.
Wasn't even selling timber. They was splitting it, piling it, because the way they looked at, logging back then, didn't have tree cutters in the 70s. People cutting with chainsaws. So either the land was running there high graded, but it was in their way. You could take that D8 dozer with that V blade or that KG blade, Dudley, and just, like I showed you back in the woods, you just go straight through it. Boom, boom, boom.
They don't have deep roots. The drip line, the roots are big, but they're not. They're shallow.
No, but that thing just splits them. It split them up. Hit it about 3 times. It had if you'd ever seen one, look on the internet, a KG blade or a V blade. It's
like a wood splitter.
It's a giant wood splitter on a D8 dozer.
Yeah.
And I've got one. I've got a 72 mile. I was telling Dudley, it's like sitting on top of a FHA house.
Yeah, I bet you feel really cool running that thing.
That thing, put my hair back, I put me a bandana on. I look pretty good too. Or I will. Or run a do-rag.
It's like bush hogging times 50.
It's unbelievable. But that's where they cleared that stuff. And they were clearing it for soybeans and row crop, But, and then we started planting these second gen high grade pines, fast growing.
Had all that CRP.
CRP money was thrown out there. They were paying you $50 an acre to plant trees on marginal farmland.
Yeah, so we went from having no deer to having a bunch of deer overnight with all those pines being planted.
And there was very little, me and you talked about this, Dudley, there were very little CRPs contracts that were signed up for hardwood, because there was one out there, because some of the people in the Delta and in the prairie signed up, and the soils that wouldn't hold a pine, real high pH, they would put bottomland hardwood. They signed up for them. But, even back then in the 80s, late mid-80s, they used acorns. You'd get a bucket of acorns sealed, and I mean, you'd have a Mexican with a little thing, and he'd poke in a hole and sticking an acorn down in there. Well, I mean, you didn't have a stand, wouldn't be worth a jack. You'd have one here and one there and one there. And then, what took over? Green ash.
Yeah, ash, sweet gum, all that early successional wind-blown seeds.
Yeah, that took over those fields. And really back then, hardwood was paying more pine back then was like $50 an acre. Hardwood was up to $100, even back then. So people that but most of the time, and you've seen them, Brent, over the years, they had 100-acre field, all ash.
There's still a bunch of
And then the government, like you said, Dudley, the government, all they were looking for was a root system.
Right. They're looking for soil
Stabilization.
Yeah.
Yeah. but you didn't have an oak stand, you had a gum or an ash stand.
Right. I mean, you're trying to lump, every stand or area or site is different. And you can't just plant oak trees and expect them to dominate everywhere they're planted. Like,
that's right.
If it was poorly drained and they didn't subsoil it, there was probably a hard pan, and that ash or sweet gum is able to compete better.
Or didn't bed it to get it up out of the water.
Right. Yeah. Or bed it. Yeah. You can subsoil it and hip it up and make a row to plant in, and then the oaks usually win the race.
Yeah.
But if it's just a standard condition, and oftentimes it was overworked soils that may have been farmed to death.
Probably low nutrients.
It's harder for the oaks to win the race because it's really not a natural scenario. If that was a big stand up, just say we were in the middle of the Mississippi Delta 500 years ago and a tornado came through, the oaks would eventually win the race because that's naturally kind of how it works. But
a natural progression.
You go to an old farm field that's been farmed to death, other species are going to be able to compete better than the oaks.
It makes sense.
Let's back up for just a second before we get too far.
We're getting too nerdy here. We're getting carried away.
It's not so much that, but I want to back up, and most people have probably seen you on the Gamekeeper podcast. You're a staple on there, but you don't give your bio, your backstory on everyone. So let's
tell us a little bit about
Tell us a little about what you do at Mossy Oak. I know what Nativ Nursery. I think you were instrumental in setting that up, and so day to day background is on Dudley Phelps.
Well, I won't get too deep into like the early days, but
we won't either.
Let's just say I went to college and graduated and kind of got stuck in sales world. I wasn't having fun, selling cell phones, and like an idiot in my 30s I was married and had 2 kids. I decided to quit my job and go to grad school for forestry at Mississippi State. So I moved up here by myself, left my family back in Jackson, Mississippi, where I grew up, and went to school for a semester. And I was like, this can work. So I told everybody to move up, and
that's what we
put down our roots. And so I've been in Starkville ever since. Great place to raise a family. And then I just, I was in dendrology class. I was the older guy in class, and I was really good at identifying all these trees because it's like the only thing I'm good at.
Right.
And a few people used to look over my shoulder, as a matter of fact, while we were, ID and stuff. And one of those guys was like, I work at this really cool tree nursery that Mossy Oak started. And I was like, well, that's neat. I'd love to come visit. And so I've been there, working there ever since.
Right.
I was working while I was in grad school, pulling weeds, planting acorns, collecting seed.
Just doing all of it.
All that stuff. And then I started reading about this thing called air pruning with containerized seedlings. And I obsessed over that. It's just this new growing style. It's not bare root. You're growing them in a little pot. And
kind of like a tomato plant.
Yeah, and it forces those trees to have a real fibrous root system. And then when you plant them, it immediately grows a taproot again because it's got all these fibrous roots that can soak up moisture and nutrients and make it grow fast. So it sends down a taproot and starts growing up really quickly.
That's awesome.
So Toxie Hayes and I, about the same time, got really interested in hybrid oaks. And so we started finding some of those and collecting them. And 17 years later, I'm still there.
Wow, you've been there 17 years.
And so it's just kind of evolved really slowly. It's always been, we're mainly focused on wildlife, less of a reforestation timber type thing, but it's more like honey holes, enhancement that kind of thing. And,
buffers.
yeah, and so we've evolved into not just these awesome oak trees. We're growing fruit trees. We're also doing a lot of this new early successional stuff.
Grasses,
grasses, native wildflowers. There's kind of
Chickasaw
a new
plum, stuff like that. Yeah.
And
I
so
called him one time a couple of years ago for some mayhaws. He didn't have any.
we actually grew some. I've
Told me y'all
I've got a
working on it.
customer near Louisville that planted a whole orchard of them,
We had 'em
and they're already producing.
When I was where I
Gabe
did a lot of
Snow
my-
is his
I
name.
did a lot of my growing up in North Louisiana, and we had them.
Okay.
They used to make mayhaw jelly.
It's the best jelly in the world. It's actually better than Chickasaw plum jelly.
Really?
I will admit that.
Okay.
But so it just kind of evolved into that. We refer to the nursery and the seed company as like conservation brands. And so I focus a lot on the conservation brands and then pitch in on the podcast. I help every day. I'm sitting by the phone. It may be somebody from Iowa call, and they're like, I got 40 acres, and they'll tell me where it is, and I'll look up their soil maps and
help try to match them up with the right species.
Help them figure out what to order, help them figure out, where to put cover, where to put trees, that kind of stuff.
So that evolved. I guess that knowledge and you being in that role sort of evolved into just that, where you start looking at habitat improvement and not just so you got screening and things like that.
Yeah.
Purposely putting in maybe bedding areas or different varieties.
Right. So it's not, you're going to put in 200 acres of oak trees that are going to feed your deer. It's like strategic.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sort of surgical. And then I guess into what species, what varieties are feeding when. And I've heard you a lot of times mention the, what do you call them, the small acorn reds.
Small acorn reds.
And when he said that, I was like, I know exactly what he's talking about because they're small acorn reds.
Well,
there's no better description.
Mariah Bogus turned me on to that.
Yeah.
He was doing a study. We let him borrow our acorn collecting machine, which it looks kind of like a lawnmower. You just push it on the ground and it picks up acorns, kind of like the same thing that picks up the golf balls, just smaller.
Yeah.
And he did this study, which everybody should look it up. It's something about red oaks and deer, but look up his last name and you'll find it. But,
I told Brent for years, him and Mitt, I would tell him when we was walking through the woods, they taught us in forestry school, indicator species.
Yep.
Don't try to plant something off-site, or you're going to look for failure.
Yep.
And that's a big thing because, y'all's trees aren't cheap.
No.
They're pretty good, money out there.
Yeah.
But you've got all that technology, that growth technology, where if I get a planting crew to come out and reforest some Nuttall, Shumard, cherry bark, we're just using bare root.
They're probably going to use a 75-cent bare root and plant them on a 10 by 15.
Right. And I think, $400 or $500 an acre is what the going, the cost is now for some of that. It used to be $200, but everything's gone up with anything else. But, over the years, Dudley, I've probably, and I had to think about it, I bet I've cut in my life 25,000 acres of timber. Mm-hmm. And I bet you, and I try to reforest almost everything, except for people going back in the ag fields and different things and development. But out of that, I bet I haven't, besides a mitigation bank that I helped do, I bet we haven't planted back 2,000 in my whole career.
Right.
So that's a 20-year career. But the majority of those tracts we cut, you know what they were? Had strips of bottomland hardwood in them. And a loblolly pine has got borderline wetland feet anyway.
Mm-hmm. Loblolly means swamp.
Right. So we clear cut bottomland hardwoods, come back with pines.
Well, here come the BASF and Syngenta, and they've got these chemicals that make it really easy to come back with pine.
And you can manage it.
Yep.
You can manage it.
And
yeah. So it's just, it's, I guess we jumped on the bandwagon of, I think us as humans, we looked at our time on this earth, and all of us don't have 75 years.
Right. A pine rotation.
A pine rotation at 25 years sounds a heck of a lot better than 75 years. And, I think people, and at the time, pine pulpwood was bringing $10 a ton.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So you could thin it. I can remember thinning it, cutting the landowner $300 to $400 an acre at 13 years old. Okay. He cuts it again in 10 more years. Another $1,500, and then he final cuts it. But we never got there before the fall. So it just the mentality was, you don't need to plant a hardwood.
right.
You'll never see the
You'll
payoff.
never see the benefits. So every Dr. Land at Mississippi State was the only one that tried to get people to come back with hardwoods. I don't know if you remember Dr. Land, but he was there when I was there. And he was a hardwood guy.
Okay.
And he was our silviculture, but he was the only one that ever talked about hardwood. But then they talked about shelterwood hardwood, and they talked about, letting them come back naturally for stump sprouts, and they never really talked about reforestation of bare root hardwoods.
No.
We were taught at Mississippi State to pine. We were a pine culture. It was a pine culture program.
Right.
I think that's safe to say. Mm-hmm. And that's what we were taught in forestry school.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like Dudley said, it's not a natural environment, so the hardwood can't keep up and outdo it. So, I mean, that would be
Yeah, I mean,
some of
so
some
that
of the
was the
downside of
thing.
trying to replant it to manipulate it that way. Is it?
Yeah.
We were
And-
taught in forestry as a crop.
And then it kind of evolved into, well, let's try to grow oak trees like we grow pine trees, because
Yes.
it was so easy with pines. You plant them on a spacing,
And
you spray a release over
Yeah.
the top of them,
And go with it.
and then it just ends up pines, and then 15 years later you thin them. And with hardwoods, it's a different story. They don't prune naturally in a monoculture like pines do.
right.
But we still felt, we still wanted to do it. There's CRP fields in the Delta that are hundreds of acres of oak trees that look like bushes.
Yep.
Yeah.
All the way down to cabbage heads, small stalk, and they're 30, 40 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
and
I was
a-
talking
a
about.
pine
Sky
tree-
Lake, North of Belzona.
Yeah.
Yeah, a pine tree, when it gets close to another pine tree, it starts dropping its branches, and you have this real nice, clear,
Slick.
straight log. Well, an oak tree is not like that. Emil Gardner, another guy, last name Burkhart, a lot of USDA bottomland hardwood research, started messing around with these trainer trees.
Yes. Know all
And
about
and they kind of gave other species a score. I want to
a
say,
gum and a cherry bark.
yeah, that was basically,
Yeah.
it was red oak, sweet gum,
Yeah.
and you're on the proper site for red oak, sweet
Right.
gum, and it works great. It's like you got a cherry bark every 25 to 35 feet, and then intermixed is just sweet gums everywhere.
Right.
The train. that train.
and
But,
then-
but that tree would fight its way up. But there again, you're supposed to cut the trainer tree out at a certain time.
Eventually, though, if it was the proper site with the sweet gum, at around year 25,
The oak
the
wins.
cherry barks would end up barely winning the race. So in a windstorm would come, and the trees would shake, and the cherry bark leaves are rougher than a sweet gum leaf, and it abrades the leaves, and the cherry bark slowly make it up, and it's got like
Wow.
3 logs on it. It barely has a top.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it gets sun, and it's able to barely overtake them.
And gets over them.
And it's more complicated than it sounds. 'Cause,
Sounds pretty complicated.
Well, first of all, you got to get a good stand at year one.
right.
That's the complication. Because as crazy as our springs are, pine trees, we plant them, we can't wait to get a rain on them. Hardwoods, I guess, no different. And we get such crazy. You have these droughts. Well, guess what? You $400 an acre into some hardwood, and then you got 100 acres. You 40,000 gone.
Right.
Because they don't guarantee hardwood. I mean, they
Yeah.
just- I mean, it's
Dr. Ezel at Mississippi
Dr.
State
Ezel
was
one of
like,
my guys,
if you're growing hardwoods because you're passionate
Ezel
about
and
it.
Land were partners before Land retired. Yeah.
And he was determined through multiple studies
He's a sharp, high hardwood
that
guy.
you've got to do 2 years of like pre-emergent control, spray, and oust. Sulfametron
before
methyl.
you plant them.
Yeah, 2 years in a row. And basically, it has some effect systemically, but it also gets in the soil. And so when a seed sprouts, it kills that seed.
Correct.
And so after those 2 years, though, then you've got a pure oak stand, and then they're not going to compete with each other.
That's right.
And so you want to have some unwanted
Diversity.
hardwoods in there, some diversity to
make 'em
then
jump.
make them. So it's just it's almost
It's hard.
impossible.
It's hard.
And
it's
so
hard.
really, what I have come back to, Dr. Grace and Dr. Stewart at Mississippi State, they were over like logging and stuff. They always
Dr.
said,
Stewart.
why deal with all those inputs, with all the spray and all the... cut it down and let it grow back.
Stump sprout it.
And it works.
It does. The only thing that I beg to differ, we have so many invasive species now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yellow Creek bottom. You've hunted it with me. Me and you've hunted Yellow Creek. Privet hedge. Mm-hmm. I mean, privet hedge takes over. Sweet bay.
Yep.
Sweet bay takes over. I mean, those species take over. And like you was talking about the cherry bark, they eventually shade out the small hardwoods that's trying to get up because they're jumping. They're faster, and they kill them out. And you know this, if you get a big stand of
Come on.
I done went blank now.
You
Like I've
looked
been,
at me like
I've been in
I
that bottle. The privet hedge.
Yeah.
You get a solid stand of privet hedge in that bottom, it'd take the whole place over.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing comes back then.
And we used to not have that.
Yes.
These
That's right. These are things that were
oaks and
brought
gums
here.
didn't evolve for the
These
last...
were brought here, and a privet hedge stand is hard to. You don't like fire, but you can't burn fire in river bottom. You don't ever get a good enough stand. And once, and I don't know what it does, Dudley, you may know, but once it takes over, it almost changes the soil composition that privet hedge does. It really does. It changes it. It turns it to like a black. I mean, it just really, one that's been there a while. I'm talking about privet hedge that's been there for 25 years.
Right.
It almost destroys it.
Well,
really
I mean,
weird.
yeah, it's
But then
it's not used to
but
it.
we can name invasive species from here to out, that we didn't have at one time. So I don't know.
It's a tough nut to crack.
is.
Yeah, boy, we've been awfully down on hardwood since y'all got rolling.
Well, no, but let's.
we need to turn.
So
this-
how do we-
to
how-
turn this
how
But
do
thing
the
we-
around.
beauty of them, if you do have hardwoods on a place, say Granddaddy wouldn't cut them. We see that a lot. I mean, you talked earlier. I get a lot of phone calls. Chris, I just want to cut the pine out, leave the hardwood. People have a love for hardwood. They do, just like you and me and you, Brent.
Yeah.
We have a love for hardwood. Maybe it's more aesthetic than it is wildlife management.
A lot of it
it's
is
just
the
something
things we
seeing
explained earlier
bottomland
about
hardwood.
If it's gone, you're 75 years at least.
You're
from
75
back.
years.
I
That's
think
right.
that's
Yeah.
I think that's part of the scare.
But I think it's in our minds. But
Let's get into some
managing
of the
that's already
managing
there.
hardwood.
Yeah,
so,
that's there.
So y'all hit on a few things that are
Yeah.
challenges with managing hardwood.
now we're talking about reforesting them.
from being
Yeah.
in bottomland, so and fire and herbicide. So all those things come up when I hear people talk about, and I don't hear as much now as I used to, but used to hear a lot about select cut hardwoods.
Yes.
Select cut hardwoods. And
I've watched
every
them.
time I say it, you make a face about it, and you want to buy high grade.
I can't stand it. It's awful. But,
You can't keep it there. The way I've heard it explained sometimes is when you first do it, it's nice and it even has some wildlife benefit. But from day one, you're losing it and you can't set it back. You can't manage
Yeah. Well, I
keep it
mean,
there, right?
and
if
if you
you've
thin
got
it too heavy,
you've got a 200-acre stand of hardwoods, and I don't want to call that a monoculture because it's not, but it's all very similar.
it's a natural forest stand. Just
And then you go in and do a selection cut and take out all the unwanted trees and leave your oaks. It's going to come back in 5 years or 1 year. It's going to all look the same. It's going to be 200 acres of something that all looks the same.
yeah.
So when it gets too tall and it's not thick anymore, your deer aren't going to want to be there during the day.
And it's so big you can't manage it. You can't even penetrate it with a dozer. I mean,
And so
Well, your herbicide, your hardwoods, it's different
You can't spray the herbicide on them.
Not really,
and
no.
Burning in hardwoods is a different ball game too.
You can do it, but it can, if you're going in it for timber, it can affect your goals,
It can.
down the road.
Barks are thin on them.
So what you've done and other people have done instead of thinning hardwoods is maybe patch clear cut.
Yeah.
I think it gives, in my perspective, Dudley, and I mean, you was down here kind of looking, it gives you some diversity. When I started managing several of these places, the deer are already there, but I want to manage for turkeys. So I wanted the turkeys to be able, and turkeys, I think we all agree, we're turkey hunters, they benefit from a mature hardwood stand.
Oh yeah, especially when we're trying to hunt them in the spring.
They got to have them. I mean, they need them. Now pine stands are great for them, and I guess they're going to be some turkey biologists that say, "Oh, they're the best thing in the world."
Oh, they love to. They do love to follow the edge.
They do, but
late January, February, those
we've learned over the years. We've cut all the hardwood, so we've had to manage these pine stands, or you don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when most of this Tom Bigby River bottom, Lux Palila River bottom, Buttahatchee River bottoms were predominant hardwood stands. Had some mixed pines in them on ridges and things. But that's where the turkeys exploded at, Mm-hmm. And but now I can see Dudley not knocking, but you go up in the hills, Hunter and them hunts that, and they got more turkeys than we got. And they're all upland pine stands. I think that goes to a lot of, they got more nesting cover.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They got more options for nesting than we do in the bottom. We're suspected to flooding.
Yeah.
Nesting
we also
laws.
have a lot of, I feel like we have a lot more nest predators in the bottoms.
Yes. Coons, possums, whole 9 yards. But, the patch clear cut stuff, I started doing that 7 or 8 years ago. And a lot of times we wasn't doing it with mechanical, like cutting it, but we're going with a dozer. Small stuff, push them down. Like, you went and looked at that stand of Hercules Club that that we're going to take out. It's shaded everything out, so we need to set it back.
Mm-hmm.
So we started managing these little clear cuts, so I can have a guy like Mitt come in with a sprayer and spray those specific areas and not affect the whole stand as far as for the turkeys. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I like to see the hardwoods.
Well, then you surgically can locate it too.
You can.
Yeah.
Adjacency to your food plots.
And I showed him that.
And you got
adjacent to your access, where it makes the huntability improve.
Right.
Yeah. I was very impressed with some of that. How you had little thickets, strategically near food plots and things like that.
I just wanted them. My idea was to, when they stand up at 4:45, within 3 minutes, they're standing in the food plot. They got the safe of the cover, or if they're in the food plot and something perks their mind, they turn their back into safety that quick. Yep. And I think a lot of them use that and do it, and I think that's why it's been good.
Yeah,
but mine are now. I showed you 2 stands of them. They're ready to be set back. I'm gonna have to do it this year. So we signed up for some CSP stuff and got it, and and I think you're pretty familiar with some of the treatments, the hack and squirt, different stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll get a good score with that. You got like a patchwork or a mosaic.
Right. And
I don't want to call it a checkerboard because some of the squares are fewer.
Different. Yeah.
But, like I said, on that 200-acre select cut, you've got 200 acres of the exact same thing until you go in there with some equipment again. But here, like you said, a turkey can hang out in the big open woods and scratch for bugs and acorns, and in 1 minute they can be in some nesting cover,
and hide.
In 3 minutes they can be in some brooding cover,
right?
And it works the same for deer,
right?
You're just kind of making everything they need in a tighter package.
And you said it, and then we were riding. But I think the deer, Brent, when you talk about this, a lot of them big deer, they don't like being around a lot of deer. So my idea was Swiss cheese. I want to put a lot of little holes. That way when he's rutted out or he's breeding a doe, he's got his own thicket he can get in. He don't have to be around all his other ones because they get bullish. They don't want to be around. I see that when they get 5 and 6 year old. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
When they get old, They don't want to be around all the young guys. You know, they want to kind of be themselves, you know.
Like that old man.
Yeah.
When company comes up.
Yeah, he can go
back
find
to
some.
his
Yeah,
study.
he can go find his own little hidey hole.
And you know, but it's a lot to say is the cover, but when you look at the hardwoods, you don't see them little holes. They look the beauty and the aesthetic value of bottomland hardwoods. Look, Gulf States would stand on its ground when they were selling their turkey hunts, hunt bottomland hardwoods on the Tombigbee River. And a lot of people, a lot of people wanted that experience. Bottomland hardwoods on the Tombigbee River. You know, that was a sales pitch for Gulf States or Westervelt when they were really, you know, wanting to do their hunts and stuff. And a lot of people would come from all over to hunt those bottomland hardwoods. Because, Dudley, you know this, if you left here and went 60 miles this way, this way, this way, and this way, how many pine stands you going to look at?
In the prairie?
Well, 60 miles, you're going to get out of the prairie.
Okay, yeah, you're going to see a lot of pine.
Right, that's it. I mean, everywhere. You know, and it's timber company pine. Weyerhaeuser, Camel Group, you know, all those Timcos have converted everything to pine.
If it's not pine, cattle, or ag, there's not a whole lot left.
So your hardwood is your dying breed. But I don't know of a person alive that says that they can't look at a stand of beautiful cherry bark oak and just fall in love with them, you know? It's just one of those things to me.
It's different, you know?
All right, so help us out. We get to talking about oaks and hardwoods and different oak species. Give a rundown for maybe the average guy, because, you know, you hear, you know, everybody loves a white oak or the swamp chestnut if you're a hunter, particularly a bow hunter because of that timing. But there's several... You know, there's several different species or subspecies, I guess, inside that genus. Inside that
red oak, white oak.
Yeah. So run through some of those for us, because people hear things like Shumard and Nuttall, and I'm going to say the average guy walking around, average hunter walking around,
he don't know what it is.
Don't know what it is.
Right. So the deal with red oak, white oak is they're called a taxonomic section, not a family. And so the reds are different from the whites. The whites are what everybody, and then there is something called a white oak, but there's a lot of different white oaks. So swamp chestnut, regular white, live oak, post oak, chinkapin oak, you name it. That's the white oak section.
I didn't realize a live was a white oak.
A live is a white oak. It has pointy leaves, but it
looks like a red oak.
I would have missed that one on Trivial Pursuit.
And then the sawtooth is in its own. It's
its own family.
It's called the Ceres section.
So it's not a white nor a red.
It's not a white nor a red.
Okay.
But you know the reds take 2 years for an acorn to form and drop. So it's going to have. Every year, a red oak is going to flower and make pollen. It's going to have female flowers that are going to get pollinated, but it's only going to grow to a half-size acorn that first year.
Stay in the tree.
Yep. And so that next spring, it's going to flower again and make some more little bitty acorns, and that acorn from the year before is then going to mature and fall out of the tree in the second year.
So for the sake of myth busting, some people might think
that acorns take 2 years
does
every other
year. That's not true. It's just a 2-year process.
It's a 2-year process, and it's going to have what we call acornettes, the little bitty guys, and the full-size acorns every year. But it may not produce a good crop every year. So
when you see those failures,
it's not because it's on a 2-year cycle.
But you look back.
You got to look back 2 years.
2 years ago to see what may have caused.
So here in Mississippi and a lot of the lower southeast was pretty much a complete red oak failure this year.
Man, it was. We've heard a lot of people talk about that.
Now, further north, you talk to people in Missouri and, you know, even in the Appalachians and, you know, whatever. A little bit further north, there was red oaks everywhere.
What caused it, you think, Dudley?
Here, so we had that Christmas...
Winter Storm Elliott.
And it went from 70 degrees to 7 in one night.
I remember that.
Yeah, like 6 hours.
And
look, bad time to be in the power business.
Yeah.
Sales were good, but the phone was
But, you know,
blowing
you
up.
see all these like Leland cypress that people planted in your yard died, all their azaleas
Smoked them.
died.
Yeah.
But then, so that's,
What did it do to the acorn tree in December?
I think it ruined the reproductive parts before they popped out of the tree.
Wow.
So you've got all these like latent reproductive buds ready to send out either a catkin, which is the male part that makes pollen,
Right.
or the female flower. I think it just damaged those branch tips enough.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
And then the next year,
That late frost.
we had a frost on March 24th, and it got really, really cold. And y'all may not
damaged.
remember this, but the same year we had that Christmas front, like around March the 7th, it got down to like,
Got real cold.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so we just had this double whammy, and it knocked out 2 years of red oak acorns. But we had a decent white oak crop this year.
Right. I did. I had swamp chestnuts and some swamp post oak.
But since there was nothing else dropping, they got eaten up just basically overnight.
So you named the white oaks. Name some common red oak regionally around here.
Water oak, willow oak, cherry bark, shoemard, black, scarlet, northern red,
Not all.
southern red, nut all.
Yeah. And them are very, I guess if you look at a compass, red oaks are predominant. Me being a timber buyer, we're in a predominant red oak society up through here. Yes. Very rarely. You cut some white oak. So Dudley, 40 acres on Tom Bigby, you're going to cut 90% red oak versus white oak.
And you talked about indicator species.
Yeah.
If you're in the woods, sometimes you can pick up on a slight change in
rise.
elevation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Based
then you
on the
get-
species of
But
tree.
now you get
can
in the
look at-
hills, Monroe County, North Clay, you get in the hills, you're going to get into more white oak.
Sure.
But even in the hills, you're going to have predominant red oak regionally here.
You are.
Because when we buy timber, we grade timber, so like right now, our red oak market's in the tank. We're cutting them for cross ties and mats when they used to be for premium flooring
Yeah.
and high quality doors,
Furniture,
furniture, hardwood floors. Now we're cutting them for gas line mats.
Yeah, and the white oak is just
we're
whiskey
sticking 'em-
barrels.
Well, we're sticking red oak right beside sweet gum, and we're bolting them together, and we're riding a track across them. I mean, really, it's weird. It's funny how things have changed economically in the timber world, the oak world.
Yeah.
You know?
And a lot of it may be something, like China may be buying something. And
Yeah.
it's just cyclical. And
It is. When their economy's good, we ship a lot of lumber over.
Yeah, my family had terrible luck with pines, thanks to a tornado, but we had some good luck with hardwoods, and it just happened to be we cut a lot of our red oak when that flooring was
so high.
Yeah.
When you started, back then that stuff would be $800-900 $1,000. So you start putting so the layman person, a load of red oak grade logs would be $3,000, $4,000 to the landowner. And sometimes on a good stand, you'd cut 2 loads to the acre, not counting your hardwood pulpwood. Mm-hmm. So you start you getting in the money then, yeah. Now these whiskey barrels, well, it's a different game. They'll bring some money that's unbelievable when they need them. It's just, they'll send a truck down to Mississippi, load these grade white oak, and go back with them. Mm-hmm. And I mean that's just it's just a really weird thing. And then after the whiskey barrels are used for whiskey, then they'll put them over to wine.
Oh yeah,
And they want charred barrels, and I mean it gets into some neat things. But all that being said, that's what controlled people cutting all their bottomland hardwoods is when that price jumped up, like your family, way high, and then we smoked them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other thing, you say that when the price is that high, a friend of ours, I saw a quote, and I don't mean to tell his business, but had a storm came through and he got a big stand of wood wiped out.
Oh yeah,
You know what I'm
I know
talking
exactly who you're talking
And
about.
I saw he was on Facebook. He had posted something about it, and there were several people chiming in. Sorry to see that. That's terrible. And he had a quote, and it's hard to argue with. He said, "Standing hardwoods is a liability."
It
I mean,
is.
that's mature standing hardwoods from an economic. You're one storm away
Yeah.
from
devastation.
From mess, from devastation.
Well, I mean, I can say the same for pines. I had an F5 tornado that was 1.25 miles wide.
Oh.
And it went through my place. It
Just really broke them.
Yeah, we lost about 130 acres
And once it twisted
of
like that, nobody wanted
hardwoods
them.
and about 500 acres of pines.
God
Like,
almighty.
college, all that was down the
Gone.
drain.
in the
Reforestation time.
But that's kind of rare.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
in my mind, like if you didn't ask this question, but I think it's important. Like, just like if you're investing for retirement, you're not going to buy one stock. You'd be dumb to. But you're going to buy mutual funds. You're going to buy some Walmart.
You're gonna
to buy some
diversify.
Conoco. You're going to
Diversification.
diversify.
Yeah. Diversification.
And that's what we probably need to be doing.
Yeah.
well, it makes economic sense, and for the wildlife, diversity is
Dudley,
key, especially for turkey.
We talked about some of these patch openings. You talk about logging crews are far few in between now. So it's hard to get a guy to come in mechanically and cut your junk. That's basically what you're doing. You want them to cut the junk and leave the best. Well, they don't want to do that because they can't make any money. So this new hack and squirt is really come on, which I told you I was against it, and I'll have to admit when I'm wrong. But I was just like, why would you want to kill something that you could sell? But I was a timberman thinking and not thinking of wildlife. And while wildlife now is bringing more money on some of these properties and the wildlife vision,
Sure.
okay, so kind of talks about this hack and squirt and how some of that stuff, because that's a big thing. I've heard more, how, Brent, everybody's talking about fire, burning.
Thing used to be you see it Missouri. It was
It
not
wasn't a big
lot
thing.
of hack and squirt,
But now,
hinge cutting here.
So what we're doing, and it's basically you got a man with a hatchet, okay, and he's got a squirt bottle, and he's got a 50-50 or whatever solution of some Arsenal or some different ones, and he's hacking that tree, and he's squirting it in. You hack it at an angle, and you hit it, and you're killing it.
Yeah.
Basically, you're killing a tree. So
And it's a lot of fun.
it's a lot of fun. Except me and him was talking about hitting hickories.
It
That
gets
ain't
a
fun.
little hot.
Hey,
and
hickory-
the briars and
yes.
yeah, it's fun.
But
Is there a better time to do it? When's the optimal time?
you kind of surprised me.
Yeah,
Tell us that timing.
I like using Arsenal, which
Yes,
the
it's
chemical name is a Mazapir.
Yes.
BASF. Now now you can get generics. It's often called. What are some of the generic?
Knock her
names?
loose.
Yeah. Anyway, it's blue.
That sounded
And
good.
Just tell them you want
Yeah.
some generic Arsenal at
I was gonna say
Mazapir.
Arsenal.
the
I
co-op.
Yeah.
And the label has changed over the years.
It
It used to be like you could put a 10 to 20% solution.
And kill them.
Right. And I killed a lot of trees with a 10 to 20% solution. Now the label says, I think 50-50,
Yeah.
which I think they're just trying to sell more product.
So what that thing does,
But-
Dudley, your sap, we always heard sap rises and falls. Your sap's going to fall in the fall of the year in the wintertime. Then it's going to rise back in the spring.
Right.
So tell them what that chemical
So you
doing.
only want to do it when the sap is mostly going down. So, in the spring, when trees are growing really fast, I don't know if y'all know this. When I was a kid, we would cut down little bitty saplings and peel the bark off.
Oh, yeah.
And make bows and arrows.
bark will slip.
And it was slipping. And so when it's growing fast, there's a lot of sap going between the wood and the bark. And so you can peel the bark off really easily.
Right.
If the bark is slipping, you don't want to be doing hack and squirt.
Okay.
So usually around July, the rain cuts down. You're not getting as much rain. The bark kind of is sticking again. Mm-hmm. That's when you can start doing hack and squirt. So usually,
how far would you do it? July?
I would say
Can you do it now?
Yes.
January of this year?
Yeah. So when you start getting warm days in the late winter, I'd probably go mid-July to mid-February in the South.
Okay. It'd be a lot easier doing it now before the briars.
And it's really best right as the color change is about to start. Like some species, if the leaves are gone, it doesn't work quite as good.
Some people
I can
might need those leaves for ID.
And
I'm
I
gonna
can
say it gets a little bit
right.
Yeah.
I can still kill 85% of the trees.
Now.
Just with Arsenal. Some people like to mix in other chemicals like triclopyr. I usually just stick with Arsenal. It's easy. You do 1 hack for every 3 inches of diameter. So if it is a 12-inch tree that is about the diameter of somebody's foot, you can
that
hold
big around.
Yeah. You put a hack every 3 inches. So you would put 4
Hacks around.
4 hacks.
Yeah.
Just so you're swinging your hatchet downwards at a downward angle.
Yep.
And then you just get 1 squirt of that solution
to each one.
cut. It's really supposed to be 1 milliliter, but I bought some kind of cleaning. I think I stole some cleaning solution out from under the sink and dumped it out, and that's
Used
been
the bottle.
my bottle.
Bobby, it wasn't at the office.
That's been my bottle.
Look, I went to Harbor Freight and bought me 4 of the old Harbor Freight. Because, look, my guys can break they can break a lead ball in a minute with a rubber hammer. So I bought me some of those Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
But then I got on a plate, bought me an old flat, and sharpened them. Hey, sharpen them as sharp as you can get them.
Yeah.
Because I did some hacking squirt.
Radio gonna come in.
Yeah,
with no
radio
finger.
come in and hit itself,
And
But,
it'll bounce off a hickory.
It will.
You gotta peel some, but like sweet gums and ashes.
it's just damage.
And so, you were talking about this lane. You were calling it a gas line, even though it's not. I'm
Right.
creating a gas line on my place
Okay.
right now, and it's like 600 yards long,
You hacking squirting the whole thing?
and I'm hacking squirting the whole thing.
Wow, man.
And so I've got about 1/4 of it done, and
You got it flagged out?
I've got it flagged out.
cool.
And I'm just doing the whole lane and doing it. It's
You gonna let it die and then maybe come in with something and
yeah. I'll
clean
be
it?
running
Yeah.
fire through it anyway.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that's cool.
So and then you can go into your hardwoods and do it, and not every oak is going to drop heavily. Like some individuals are just going to be your winning trees.
Yeah.
But so you leave those good ones, and then you can take out the ash that's kind of in the way of it. It's taking up root space. It's blocking some sunlight. Take out that ash. Give your oak more root space and more canopy space to make more acorns.
What about translocation? You ever get nervous about that?
So
What is
I
translocation?
was talking to Dr. Ezel
For the
about
rest
this.
of us.
So it's like when a tree grafts with another tree. Their
Like under the ground.
their roots touch.
So you kill.
They're
That's
feeding together.
But the thing is I'm not going to be hacking and squirting a bunch of oaks. But yeah, like if you were going to try to kill a water oak that was growing 6 feet away from another water oak, their
Might
roots
get
are
both of 'em.
touching. It might get both of them.
Would a
but-
gum and a water oak, will they? You think?
Probably not. No.
That's good. That's
So,
good to know. I didn't know that.
I know how to graft, grafting apple trees
Yeah.
or whatever. It has to be related enough for the root,
For them to, that makes sense.
And so if they're not related, they're not going to share roots but yeah, you could, if you killed a sweet gum and didn't hack the one next to it, it might damage that one.
Another sweet gum.
Yeah. But I mean, Dr. Ezel,
He was a sharp dude. Now he loved it.
and he was like, I don't know of one instance where we actually did
Killed
that.
one.
But yeah, I recommended it to a customer a few years ago, and
Yeah.
he called me a year later and said, I killed a bunch of trees. It's your fault. I'm like, I don't know what you did. You may have put too much.
But listen now, and so
If the
people know
squirt
this.
bottle lets too much,
You
don't want it dripping on the ground.
You don't want it dripping on the ground.
Yeah.
It'll kill a tree as big as this table.
yeah.
I've killed thousands and thousands of trees, and I've never noticed that happen before.
So but don't be reckless with it. Don't wash it in a bucket and throw it under a tree.
No.
Be really site specific with that tree. If you're going in to kill, your trees out and you can ID them good enough to know, a lot of
Don't
people
put it in a
can't-
backpack sprayer.
Look.
And kind of casually spray. Don't
Look,
do that, right?
Now there's another one. The
I hired
basil
a-
bark treatment.
Yeah.
You can fill a backpack sprayer up and put a flat nozzle on it
And spray
to
it
where
down
it
the side of
squirts
it.
a line instead of a circular pattern.
Yeah.
You put
Remedy.
75% diesel, 25% remedy.
Yeah.
And you make what looks like a buck rub. So it's like a you
scratch
only
it.
do this on smaller trees.
Yeah. But it'll kill them dead as a
and
doornail.
you paint what looks like one side of the tree,
side of the
roughly what looks like a buck rub, and it'll kill it.
It'll kill
it's
it
a little
dead,
more
Brent.
expensive,
Yeah. I
but
knew
it's
some
also
guys
a
that
little
was
bit easier to do.
Doing some apple orchards, and he went in and killed them. He'd scrape them and rim it in diesel fuel.
And you don't have to scrape them.
Right,
If
he
it's
was
thin
spraying on the
enough
bark, yeah.
it will penetrate the bark.
He was spraying on some gum trees, deadly, it would smoke them.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, be sitting there, which
In my opinion, it's actually a little bit easier.
It
but
is
you just
easier.
can't kill bigger trees, and it costs a little bit more.
what do you
'cause
on
you're
that basil stuff? What's your diameter? Probably no bigger than that.
4 or 5 inches.
4 or 5 inches, yeah.
Once it starts getting barky instead
Yeah.
of slick
Yes,
barky,
yes.
that's when you need to just move on
Yeah.
to.
To the other thing.
To hacking.
But I'm telling you, that's why I wanted to question. That's one thing about me. If I don't know about something, I'm going to ask a person that's done it. But this hack and squirt, I guess this CSP, because the government's paying people to take unwanted species and take things out for wildlife.
Yeah.
And it's boomed up. I mean, we've had several of our listeners.
And the CSP program, it's basically like a biologist will come in and judge you on what you've done.
Yeah.
And so when
he writes your prescription. And
and they pay you based on
the amount of stuff you want to take out.
So a dead tree then becomes what's called a snag.
Yeah.
And then woodpeckers can eat larvae. Bats have somewhere to live. And so
these long-eared bats are really they're kind of like the cock-headed woodpecker of 2020.
Okay.
It's these long-eared bats.
So for most of us, you would be doing this to create those canopy holes to get sunlight on the ground,
right?
To get those native plant species.
Back to this patchwork quilt we were talking about.
Yeah. This is a way to circle back to where you originally set the question up. Is if you can't come in
and log it,
machinery, hire somebody, you can go in like you said. Over time, you're doing a whole gas line. You can get in there yourself with a hatchet and some herbicide and create these.
But Brent, one of our listeners, good listener of ours, Josh Ward, got 40, 50 acres. He brought a crew in of Latin American guys. They he took a picture, sent them. They hack and squirted his whole place. And they did it in like a day.
Yeah, I remember Josh called me about it.
They rolled through
like,
that
you need
stuff.
any done.
Yeah, so, that's cool stuff.
They would call that a TSI crew.
TSI crew, that's right. And they're mostly,
that's timber stand
improvement stuff, yeah. And
I got a whole cheat sheet on
acronym sheet. Yeah, we need.
But you take what I try to do is go in the winter and flag out the areas that keeps any, and I'm trying to tell people this, that keeps any mistakes from happening. So I may do 15 holes flagged out, every irregular shape, whatever. Then I bring the crew in and say, kill everything inside the flags except the big oaks.
Maybe leave a couple big oaks.
Right. And I said, kill everything else. That way it kind of, you can't get out of hand doing that.
Yeah, that goes back to the timing. You talked about you had this pretty long range of months you could do this effectively, but once the leaves drop, you need to know what you're looking at.
You got to be able to identify
what trees.
And I tell you what, you could probably, most of the listeners are around here.
Yeah.
So
regional.
You could learn sweet gum, ash,
hackberry,
hickory, hackberry, or just almost say like, I can tell this is an oak, so I'm not going to kill it.
Learn two oak trees, and then everything.
Hey, how about this? Use your phone on that Google search.
Yeah.
But I
I tried that.
They all look the same.
Yeah, those plants.
But if you can identify,
my point is, if you can,
pretty easy.
If you can figure out what 3 to 4 species, unwanted species are, and
just
get rid of them, then you might come back in a couple of years with a little more knowledge and get the rest of them.
And I can tell you this: us being forestry background, and you being hunting background, an oak looks different than the bad species.
Yeah, they do.
Harder, bark's different, rigid. Tight, I think tight bark, besides hackberry or and your hickories, they're flaky.
And what's funny is
has that tight bark.
You can hit them with the backside of that hatchet, and oftentimes just ID it based on the thump that you get.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. When I cruised hardwood timber, they taught us to
sound it
with a hammer for dotiness. You know,
But it's not hard, and I mean, folks just need to get out there and
but
do
that's
it.
the thing that most people, our listeners, you could do it yourself.
Right.
You
I mean,
know?
if you accidentally kill an oak, it's not the end of the world.
It would be for me,
Even
but-
some of those big ones that you leave, you may come back 3 years later and say, you know, this thing hadn't dropped many acorns since.
I'm gonna take it out.
So I'm going to turn that thing into firewood.
Yeah.
And then let some early successional stuff come up.
A patch of early succession will pay you off a whole lot more than an unproductive oak tree.
Look,
From a
I agree with that.
I run a nursery. I sell trees for a living.
Yeah.
But there's people killing 200-inch deer in areas that
Don't even have a tree.
there isn't a single tree anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, now I love oaks. I'm not really.
That's right. Yeah.
But
sure. But I know what you're saying. Yeah.
that's yeah. I'm saying.
Yeah. But you know, you think about all wildlife. Let's get off of deer. They can grow in town. As long as you got to grow up.
We get deer centric.
Deer
We
centric.
do.
And I do too. I love
I
They're
am
my favorite.
deer-centric.
They're my favorite. But squirrels, turkey, you know, songbirds, all these, you know, animals, turkeys again, and then probably another turkey.
And that all adds to the experience.
all-
I don't
yeah.
know if I'm getting old, but
Right.
I'm like just sitting there with my binoculars and being like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a cool bird.
Yeah.
I love to slide in on a big swamp chestnut that's got it's like a
Oh,
recliner.
it's like waiting for you.
Tuck in one of them.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
love
waiting
that.
for you. And it's just, it's nothing. And I kind of go back to what Westervelt said, that experience of a bottomland hardwood is cool. It's cool. You know,
My buddy
big
Mark-
cypress. I love a cypress. So my girls, we got some huge ones. We got two that made it past the Civil War clear cut. They're probably 300 years old. Big cypress. And I carry my girls down there, and his girls. We got pictures of them where his girls and my girl, when they were little, got pictures. I mean, they're standing on this tree, and this tree's huge.
Yeah.
So this winter, it's been so dry.
Because it's normally in a slough.
It's in a slough. So this winter's so dry, so we all come down here for Christmas, my girls and my little granddaughter, and we went and took pictures in front of that tree.
Okay.
And it was so cool. I tried to, you know how you always recreate one?
Mm-hmm.
So me and her got on there, and which I think my stomach's a small bit bigger, but I still look like pretty good guns on me.
Gun.
But
Dad bod.
we took, so she's 19 years old, so she's standing behind me. She was about 9
Yeah.
when they were taking it, and then I stood there, and we recreated something. It was pretty cool stuff. But those cypress were so beautiful,
Oh yeah.
you know.
'Cause, I mean, we all love trees.
That's it.
I mean, it's,
You know,
we're
and
all
it's
somewhat
a
tree
cool
nerds.
thing. And if nobody's ever seen them, Sky Lake,
WMA.
WMA in the Delta, Wildlife Mississippi has it's a free trip. Take your tail over there.
I've never been.
Me and a girl went over there, and we had the best time and watching the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And we just went through it, and it's got a skywalk.
Kayak through there.
You can kayak through there when the
that's
water's there, but
yeah.
they're the oldest cypress trees in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're right over there. It's free. You go in. It is the coolest thing. Belzona is where it's at. It is so awesome to see them. They're just giants.
I don't know what it is. We were talking about this the other day at work. Just, you know, picture yourself, you snap your fingers, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a monoculture loblolly pine stand. And then you snap your fingers again, and you're in the middle of these big daddy hardwoods.
Bottomland hardwoods. Yeah.
And you take a breath. It's like a feeling.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I agree with that.
you know,
Yeah,
kind of the
I do.
same feeling you get when you're sitting staring at a fire in the fireplace or something.
Or a good looking woman walking by at the fair.
yeah, it's-
I mean, it's
it's
one of them things,
It
you know.
triggers.
Yeah.
It's something about it, and
It hits more than one sense too, because like there's something. It may be a little sappy, but you think about the fall around the holidays, that weather change. You can smell those white oak acorns. You ever use that cover scent called Shines?
no.
You know, it's kind of a sweet. It's an acorn scent. It's
Okay.
kind of a sweet white oak. It's pretty close to that white oak smell.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just something in the air. Yeah, that's a
I
good point.
always think about when I'm looking at beautiful stands of timber and what did the Indians see? You know, what did they look at? And
They,
you know, there's
I hate
no
to
doubt
say
they
it,
looked at that. No doubt they looked at that cypress.
they may have taken it a little bit for granted just because that was all they had back then.
Well, they was probably pretty hungry. They was probably looking at, that's acorn bread ain't good as that coon bacon I'm finna get over there.
Yeah, but
it's just I'm telling you, those big bottomland hardwoods are almost magical. I mean, really it is. I mean, it is. I don't know, but managing, hey, like we said, big beautiful hardwoods, 9-10 months out of the year.
Yeah, so there's
what are they good for?
Yeah, there's
for wildlife
management and value side of hardwoods. But then the hunter, for the hunter, if you start running down, if you had to sort of, it's hard to rank them by preference because you've got a timing factor in there also.
Mm-hmm.
So
when they drop.
So if you started at the beginning of bow season, early fall, kind of go through the timing and maybe preference with that timing of acorns. If a guy's wanting, if you're going to hunt acorns, if you're hunting acorns and you're scouting the acorns,
know your oaks.
So
right. What's first?
Swamp chestnuts are pretty early.
They're pretty early.
They're pretty early. I guess sawtooths are early if you have them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But
they're not natural.
And it seems like water oak may be the first.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you'll get white oaks that drop green acorns kind of early.
A little windstorm.
Yeah,
blowing
weevil
down.
damage. It'll drop them out, and they'll eat those.
Green, you'll see them green.
Yeah, I agree with you saying. I've never heard him say that, but yeah, they are.
We refer to them as aborts.
Yeah, that's
yeah. And so it seems like water and willow oak are first. And then...
but now, won't they drop for a longer...
They do, and they're also, and I don't want to say they're less preferred, because sometimes deer will find one that they just love. Like, I can point you in the directions of several southern reds that everybody says are just full of tannins.
Overcup. People say, they don't like. Yeah, but look, I can come down here. He hates them, but look, I can find a hot one, and they'll eat every one of them. Hey, this year they didn't have many, but the overcups fell. So they were.
You can find a good overcup that they'll nail.
I never found a good overcup, but now those water oaks I found. There's a spot I used to bow hunt a lot over in Steens, and the farmer let me hunt. They would have standing soybeans, and I would find a good tree on the edge, and I'm hunting soybeans. I have watched deer, and enough of them do I know it wasn't a coincidence. Walk through standing soybeans to go feed under a certain water oak on the edge of this field, and they would rather go and eat that. Like I said, they're walking through standing soybeans to eat those.
I don't know what it is. Toxie says that their brain is more attached to their stomach than a human.
Have been something some input
to that.
Something is telling them that
to go to those trees.
Yeah.
Well, look, we're talking about failures, but one of my dear friends out of the Mississippi Delta, Patrick Maloof, he's one of the...
A lot of Maloofs in the Delta.
But he's a share owner of the Irby Woods.
Okay.
So it's 640 acres of all red oak, bottomland hardwood, green tree reservoir. They pump it up. Guess what? Didn't have any acorns.
Yeah, they leave water. That's a big deal in Arkansas
so now they pump up all these beautiful bottomland hardwoods, but there's nothing for the duck. And the ducks have really responded like you think they would.
Well,
they're not coming in there.
That's some of the...
and those,
in Arkansas, I think. There's
Arkansas too. There's a lot of people that, because of, like you said, that late frost and that storm, that winter storm. I mean, you're talking about very high quality, very expensive places that didn't even fire many shots.
Correct.
Because they didn't have any natural food available for the animals that they were. We're not just talking about turkeys and things, but ducks. Well, hey, wood ducks. Mallards, I mean, they got to have those little red oak acorns.
Oh, for sure.
I ain't never seen a mallard eat a white oak acorn.
No.
Well, we're going back, so we're talking about the timing and preference. So, so your willow oaks, water oaks, they're dropping.
And then you start getting into, then you're kind of just open season here. Then the white oaks start dropping good. Then you start getting cherry bark and swamp chestnut dropping hard. They're just a little bit later than regular white oak.
They drop fast.
I've watched wood ducks. That's funny to watch a wood duck eat a big swamp chestnut like that place up in Caledonia. I had several big swamp chestnuts.
They will
on the
eat-
creek.
Yeah.
How do they get it down?
I don't know, but
They
a
did.
mallard
They
won't
would.
normally. A big duck won't normally eat something that big, but you can find. You check the crop of a wood duck, you'll find pecans.
Yeah,
and
those
big
suckers
big
are
stuff in
ambitious
there.
eating.
You know, I had wood ducks on that creek that we crossed at McGower Creek, and those wood ducks would come up out of that first field we stopped at, and they would land, they'd circle and land in the field, and they'd eat those nut-alls and those shoe marts. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, good
You don't
Lord.
think about it, yeah.
No, you don't
Walk
think
the
about
dry
looking, there's a group of ducks in your field eating, but they are.
But
And
it's
they're funny.
interesting. I've kind of evolved over the years, and a lot of it has to do with that study Mariah and Marcus Lashley and them were all doing. But and my customers are kind of evolving. But everybody,
Reds,
I want
reds.
white oaks,
Yeah.
I want sawtooth, I want swamp
They've got such a
chestnut,
small window.
and but I guess they taste better. They have lower tannins, but it's these little red oaks that fall to the ground and get hung up under
what
the
are
leaf
you, What are
litter.
you saying? You talking about willow and water oak?
Willow oak, water oak, cherry bark.
The small acorns. Yeah.
And then you go up the hill, you got black oak and scarlet oak and blackjack oak.
You ever seen mountain oak? You ever seen it?
Mountain oak would be what I probably call chestnut oak.
They're
Yeah.
big. Yeah.
Yeah, you see them in the Appalachians.
Yes,
They got real
yes.
weird, blocky
So up
looking
in
bark.
North Alabama, Marion County, Alabama, there's a line up through there, and we get into a bunch of black oak and
Mountain oak.
mountain oak. Mhm.
There's a bur oak.
Deer don't really eat mountain
No.
oak much.
There must be real high in tannin because they don't. Look, you'll find them cruise timber. They'd be
I've
loaded.
gone backpacking in Bankhead National Forest.
Yeah, they got a bunch of them.
And they've got pigs, and you'll still see those mountain
eat
oak,
them. Yeah.
chestnut oaks
Wow.
on the ground.
They don't eat
They don't even eat them.
They say that black oak is hard as damn bodock. It's hard. It's a hard.
I
oak.
didn't know blackjack would make an acorn even. I don't think I'd ever seen it.
It does. It
Yeah.
does.
It's pretty neat.
So your white oaks, we're getting your white oaks, and then the reds you just mentioned, they're continuing to drop, or they're holding. They drop later,
Yeah.
right?
And then, so you've dropped, white oak, swamp chestnut, water, willow, cherry bark. And then you start getting some of these late droppers.
Those are the oaks I think that get overlooked by a lot of hunters.
They don't
Right.
know what they
Into
are.
Food plot. You're into that part of the year that's it's food plots, rut in the south,
Right.
and you still probably overlooking some good.
Right. So
acre.
Shoemart oak is folks up north, they've got northern red oak. We've got a few northern red.
Southern red,
They're
yeah.
kind of hard to tell apart. But Shoemart is a bigger acorn. When you break it open, it's not orange like most of the other reds. It's kind of a yellowish white.
It is. That's right.
Does that represent tannin? I've always just thought
I don't think it does. I'm honestly not sure.
Yeah, and
And
but-
they got less tannin in them because I can bite into them and they don't
But
hooker you down.
it's funny, the more I obsess over this, the less I think deer care about tannins. I think it's just what is in.
Timing,
Is it
what's
more
available.
carbs, more fat?
What's going to fill my
something-
gut up?
And so Shoemart drops kind of late, but they vary. Some of them drop on time with all the other early oaks, and then some individuals are kind of like a nut-all. They don't start dropping till
hold.
December.
Yeah, they
So
hold
the
the
acorn
tree.
is mature, but for some reason the cup won't
holds
let
on.
go of the acorn.
Yeah. Winds blow them down.
Wind, freeze, thaw, that,
holds in the tree longer.
and then nut-all oak, which is indigenous to the Mississippi Delta, and we actually have some here in the prairie too. The textbook won't tell you
some
that.
down here.
But they don't even think about dropping till December.
Yeah. I got some Dudley stays in January.
Yeah.
Even first turkey season, they'll still be up. If we look at them with binoculars, they'll still be
Yeah,
collected.
we've collected both nut-all and shoemard for the nursery as late as March and April
Yeah.
on the ground.
But
Going
now,
through parks.
Brent, one thing why a lot of people don't see them because on that side of the river, you never see shoemard nut-all. More
Tom Beebe on the east side.
in the east side of the
where we're
river,
at, yeah.
sandier ground, you don't have shoemart nut-all. I don't witness them. I witness them more in this heavy clay river, and even in some of the stands, they'll be in the ravines, down in the little gullies.
Yeah,
I'll
so
see them.
shoemard can't handle poor drainage like a nut-all, but
Right.
you'll still find it in bottoms. Oftentimes they'll be like
On a
fungal
very-
spots on the
yeah.
leaves, but they'll be on a faint
A
rise.
little faint rise. That's right.
But you'll also see them further in hilly areas. You'll
yes.
see them on the hills
Yes.
too. Not all you only find on poorly drained
Yes,
bottom
in
ground.
the bottom. Yep.
And my selling point when folks call in with Nuttall is when your food plots look like a putting green, they're just starting to drop.
Right. That's true. A lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
We used to call them rut oaks. Of course, in Mississippi, the rut's late, but
Yeah.
Right.
people up north don't understand that because their rut's in November.
I always
It's-
loved them because they would be late because there was a food source, a high energy food source that would drop in February.
when there's hardly any
There's nothing
food.
for them to eat.
And that's a good look. That's a good source again. We were talking about getting maybe off deer or something. That's got to be a good food source for turkeys.
Ain't no question.
When there's
yeah.
because you get in
I mean,
that
where do
time
you
where there's
scout-
nothing else.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, it's going to be a weird
If you-
turkey
if you
scout in
make your living-
February
if you
because
make your
there's no
living
acres
scratching
anymore.
in the leaves,
There's no food.
then those acorns are handy.
And they can just eat so much clover.
I mean, that's my first week of turkey season is looking for scratching in late February. You know,
Identifying.
where's those red oaks that they're going to go to, and I'm going to be hunting near there.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do this year because there's not any acres.
Yeah.
But yeah, clover,
If
Gonna
you
be-
find
yeah.
little green
Yeah.
stuff.
I don't know that just Dudley, we got to get people, and y'all have done a very good thing at the Native Nursery. Y'all are really the only people that's out here pushing reforestation of hardwoods. And y'all's thing is, look, plant you some orchards, some patches, you know, and I mean, because nobody else is talking about it.
Yeah.
To do it. And we don't think to do it because it takes, you got to take care of them.
It's
You can't
not
just
as
turn
easy
'em
as
loose.
it's not as easy as calling your forester
No.
and say, "Can you get some pines in the ground and get them
Right.
sprayed?"
But you've got to take care of them too. And I've noticed the Hollis boys, they had some of the first sawtooth oak trees in this country. They're daddy. I mean, they've got some that's this big around.
Wow.
I mean, that big. 80s, early 80s. I think
God,
Brian
I believe
told us
that's 40 years
83,
old.
84
40
when
years
they
old.
planted them. I mean,
Yeah.
they were. And
I did some of that with my granddad.
Weren't they from Japan or Asia? Wasn't they?
Asia, yeah. I've actually hung a lock on. It's been years, but I hung a lock on in a sawtooth that I
unreal.
planted when I was a kid and
That's
killed a deer
awesome.
out of it.
But it's just, but they sprayed around them, put a band around them. I remember J.C. Evans watering them,
and
digging.
down.
You know, hey, they took care of them, and they've got some of the most beautiful pure stands of sawtooths they ever seen. But they didn't make acorn this year.
Yeah, that
What got them? That same thing you think?
it's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, nobody.
You
had
can ask anybody in the Southeast. I talked to a buddy the other day, and he was like, "Yeah, I had one gobbler sawtooth produce a bunch of acorns, and none."
Buddy Ricky Wright,
Yeah,
he had
one.
He had some
one.
that had
that had some, because I mean, when you're looking at different sizes of them, but like you said, that was a once in a lifetime event, that Arctic freeze that dropped like that, and it damaged them. That makes perfect sense.
I talked to a buddy in Oxford. He has 1,900 sawtooths on his place and didn't find a single acorn.
See, that's wild.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's another reason that diversity always wins. And sawtooth is great.
What
but
is your popular? Tell me this at closing. What's your most popular tree that you really like that y'all got at the nursery? What do you? I mean, we hear a lot of stuff. Chestnuts, Dunstan chestnuts, or some kind of chestnut. Are you a chestnut guy, or what? What do you? Is that more of the diversity?
Chestnuts are great. They drop at the same time sawtooth does,
So
which
they're
is
early.
September, early October. I think they like them better than sawtooth, and then humans.
Well, they look funny with that big
Humans can eat chestnuts too. I personally just like it to look natural, and so I may plant a few of those in some honey holes for shooting does or whatever. But
Yeah.
I want woods. I want it to look
You want
like
forest.
I want natives and I want woods.
Yeah.
And so, but that's just me.
This hybrid oak you were talking about that you and Toxie. What? It's a hybrid oak. Is it a white or a red, or what is it?
Well, we've got red and white hybrids. So
What's the fastest? Which one's going to outgrow the other one? Site Pacific.
The fastest growing hybrid oak we have, and that's going to vary depending on where you are. But around here, we've got one called Rainmaker.
Okay.
It has not been named yet. A lot of hybrids have a scientific name. So it'll be like Quercus is the
Quercus
genus of oaks.
Watsonia.
but there'll be an X. It'll be Quercus X if it's a hybrid. Meaning it's a cross between two things. Rainmaker oak is a cross between overcup and then regular white oak.
Wow. Okay.
And so
that's pretty cool.
Overcups have evolved to grow fast because they're going to be flooded.
That's right.
Do.
They
so they have to grow fast.
And they make a lot of acorns too. You'll see them rafted up.
But deer will gobble them up. It grows incredibly fast and it produces at a young age. So I've planted Rainmaker oaks that make acorns at year 5 or 6 pretty routinely.
That's wild.
I've got them at the nursery.
Mm-hmm. I've got them at the nursery. That's awesome. Rainmaker. Okay.
But there's a lot of hybrids that are cool. We've got a water oak, nut all hybrid. We've probably got 10 or 12 different hybrids.
That's cool. I'd like to come see them.
So you drive, I like to drive down the road, and of course I'm a safe driver, but I'm always looking on the side of the road for oddball trees.
Oh, he saw, I had a persimmon right on the side of the thing, and he looked again, and he run that old rubber neck out there, but it was, it was that big.
It was
straight as an arrow.
It was like a 24-inch persimmon.
And it was straight as an arrow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's rare.
Pretty.
You don't see them that big.
It's a big persimmon. It had a crazy looking bark too, didn't it?
Yeah. Now black gum will look like that when it gets older too, but it didn't have the horizontal branching.
That's right. That's right. It was.
That's another favorite wildlife tree. Black gum.
Black gum. Okay.
Yeah.
They fruit a lot.
They fruit a lot. Turkeys will scratch the heck out of them.
Wood ducks like them.
Wood ducks like them.
Yeah.
So.
They're a beautiful tree in the fall.
It's another hardwood.
Red as that.
Yeah.
Persimmons are real popular at the nursery.
Yeah.
What about the Japanese persimmon? Talking about hybrids. Do y'all do much of that?
On a personal level, I love them.
The ones that make the big ones.
I want to put those around my cabin, and I want to eat them myself, and I want to give them to my friends as Christmas presents. But for wildlife, one may fall out of a tree a day.
Yeah.
And so
they'll be over a hoof fighting trying to to get
you could pick up a bucket of them and go throw them out in a field somewhere, but I'd rather have an American persimmon that drops like 300 fruits a day.
Yeah. Loaded.
For wildlife. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
The Asian persimmons are going to stay in the yard.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
That's a lot of information. A lot of information. Y'all put a lot of this out in the Gamekeeper magazine too, don't you? That's a good place for people to.
It's not a hunting magazine. It's about what to do on your place. How to fertilize your pond. We'll talk about hacking and squirting. All kinds of management stuff.
Well, we don't need to lose sight of managing hardwoods, and that's really why we wanted you to come on. I mean, you're a hardwood guy. We like you. We really believe in your knowledge.
Well,
and I'm just like I told you, I've never done a lot of hack and squirt. I didn't want to mess up.
You almost need a mentor for it, or you just kind of like burning. Start out small.
Yeah.
Go pick a little area and tape it off like you did.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm trying to make it dummy proof.
It's not going to be the end of the world if you accidentally hack and squirt a black cherry.
Right.
You'll learn.
The cool part is a lot of that hack and squirt, you don't have to have big properties to do it. People that's managing these small properties, Dudley, the thicker they can make some airs, the more game they're going to hold on their place.
And you got to look outside your borders to see what that limiting factor is, what you need. It may not be that if you're
look at what your neighbors are doing.
If you're surrounded by thicket and cutover, you probably may not need it.
You may not need it. That's right.
I can't tell you how many times people have called in and say, I get tons of pictures at night. It may be somebody from over in Yazoo City in the hills, and it's nothing but hardwoods.
Right.
They're like, we got tons of deer, but I only see them at night.
Well,
and it's because all you've got is vacuum cleaner hardwoods, and there's nowhere for them
to lay down.
You got to have, and I tell people, I use this theory all the time, different places I speak at, different things. A deer's only this big when he's laying down. Okay? Do you know how many of them you can get in
an acre?
A quarter an acre? A quarter of an acre.
Especially if it's thick.
Right, if it's thick enough. So, and our visual, we can ride through a place, and if we see a hole out there where a big tree fell, or it don't even register with us. We're looking at the beautiful hardwoods. Mm-hmm. But if you got those little spots all over, It's a mosaic.
Once you start looking,
It's a mosaic, and you're never going to miss it. Like you talking about turkeys. You said, Chris, the turkeys just go around it.
Yeah.
You know, and if they feel like there's predator ambush, they'll stay away from them. They're not dumb. They're going to stay away from them. But I think it helps everything from deer, bedding, resting,
huntability.
hiding, huntability, turkeys, nesting, you know, brooding. I think it helps everything.
Oh yeah.
You know, especially, you know, that's one of our tools that we always talk about of our toolbox. Is just, you know, and if you don't have but a little stand of hardwood and you got pines and got a little bit of hardwood, take care of them. Take some of those other trees out of it. Look, life is about competition.
Yeah.
Okay? And the less competition we have in life, the better we do.
Yeah. Good analogy.
Really. And I mean, that's the thing. So.
Tell you what, the sooner I can close that door, the better I'm gonna be. I
Man, I
left
don't
that
know.
door open.
Did we leave
I
the
don't
door
know.
open?
My leg's about to go down. And I kept looking at Dudley. He's running that Mossy Oak vest. And it
fighting
looked
fit
good.
vest.
I did. If he had sleeves on, he'd be down. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling
I
you.
left the door open. I think
That was a bad deal.
It's cold.
My feet are freezing. But anyway, I was thinking, man, I don't know if I paid the bill, but the lights are on.
Yeah, it's cold.
Look, Dudley, we appreciate you.
Yeah,
Man.
And
I
I'm
enjoyed hanging
telling
out
you
with
that
you. We had
the
to-
trees, I would like to get you back and let's do a little bit on some maybe some IDs.
Yeah. Let's go
But
walk
me
around
and Brent
in the
want
woods.
to see the nursery.
Okay.
We'd like to see the nursery.
cool.
Well, come on.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And we appreciate you coming.
Well, thank you. I'd love to have y'all at the nursery.
Yeah. Well,
All right, well, we'll drop some links for Gamekeeper and the Native Nursery and all that in the description, and we appreciate you. We appreciate what y'all do. We're fans of your podcast. We're fans of Mossy Oak and Gamekeeper. What all y'all are doing there, and that's
yeah. If you didn't grow up growing Mossy Oak, you was running that World War II stuff.
Vietnam stuff.
Right, that Vietnam stuff, you know. But
Well, look, shrimp, deer meat,
and good
lollipops.
homemade,
we're
homemade
gonna
mashed
eat.
potatoes.
Yeah.
I'll be here every time.
that's
Those
right.
mushrooms were good.
yeah. We're gonna eat when we. That's the thing. We get together down here and go ahead and make a meal and hang out for a little bit.
It's the experience.
It is.
That's it.
It is. A lot of us are lacking in that these days.
That's
we just
it.
have a lease and we leave the house and go hunt and then drive right back
We're so
home.
robotic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we-
Getting those texts, you're
This,
hustling out
this
of the
cabin
woods.
atmosphere is where it's at.
If we had a little heat, it'd be nice.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
better.
my legs about to
But
go
you
down.
know,
I
wonder
didn't
what
know
the-
I was going to have to wear long handles inside.
well,
I
that's what
appreciate
us
it,
po
Brent.
folks are do.
That's
You
it,
know,
that's
we
right.
just make it work. However,
People don't even know what long handles are, but some of them do.
I
Some of our listeners will.
If it's below 55, if the high is below 55 degrees,
You're going to have
I
insulation
got my
underwear.
long handles on
That's it.
every day.
Yeah.
I'm pretty close to that. The older I get, the less I want to be cold.
That's right.
All right, we're gonna get out of here on that. I'm aging
Sounds
myself
good.
now. We appreciate you, Dudley.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.